Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. This week's guest, another co-founder of the Players Network, Samantha Rosette, is stepping into the 11. Born in the Bronx, went to probably one of the biggest college soccer programs in the country, University of Virginia. Then followed it up with another 2 years before she wanted to go and pursue the professional dream. And she's played in Kazakhstan, she's played in Lithuania with some Champions League opportunities in both of those countries, and now is in the French Ligue 2, looking, hopefully, to make a promotion push the rest of this season. The reason that I mentioned the Players Network there at the top is because I think that the work that they are doing over at the Players Network is truly incredible. As we all know, whether you're on the men's side of the game or the women's side of the game, it is no easy task to try and be a professional. And it's definitely not easy when you are going overseas and doing it there. So to be able to create a community, to be able to create resources for players to reach out to each other, to have a better understanding of what they are in for when they hop aboard that plane and sign that contract is really an amazing thing. I would encourage any players to go and check out some of the work that they are doing over there. So I'm looking forward to sharing this story with you. Thank you so much for all of you who have continued to listen and continue to show your love on the episodes. And I'll ask my favor, that I've been asking for the past couple of weeks here now, is if you can subscribe on the YouTube channel. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to the page. It means a lot to the community that we've created here at the In the 11 podcast to help it grow, help it reach more people, and hopefully help more people out there. So if you could do that for me, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Without further ado, I'll stop yapping here at the top. Sam is In the 11. And joining us this week is Samantha Rosette, coming to us from France, currently at the top of the table, as she just mentioned to me, in Ligue 2. So, what's that feeling like right now in the season? I know there's still a long ways to go, but I'm sure there has to be some excitement about kind of the results at this point.
Yeah, definitely. Feels really good right now, but still really hungry for more. It's a long season, and we're trying to keep the good vibes rolling, and keep our intensity up. So it's fun at the moment, though.
Yeah. With your experience so far, a couple of years now playing in Europe, and now being a part of this team and this culture where, like I said, you've been able to see some success. Has there been anything that you've noticed that really is a key factor in a team, being at the top of the table? Like, what are the qualities that you notice?
Oh, great. Good leadership is so important from within the squad and also from the coaching staff. The leadership that I'm experiencing at my club right now at RCSA is just phenomenal. And so it's really cool to be a part of something like that.
Yeah. And so I guess let me ask it from the flip side of that. How common is really good leadership at the professional level amongst clubs? And maybe not even necessarily, we don't have to pinpoint it on players and leadership, but just, front offices, coaching, like what's the, I'm sure you've done it, the gamut at this point of talking to a lot of different clubs, so you've seen it all. Like, can you describe that at all?
The variety is like as much as you could imagine. I've been in some really great environments. I've been in some not so great environments, which is a very common story across players playing professionally abroad, especially women, which is something that, we're all kind of trying to change a little bit, especially with the Players Network and all. But yeah, it's just, you can go from super unprofessional to very professional environments. And I'm sure there are even more professional environments than the one I'm experiencing right now. But it feels really good to be in an environment that is so professional and is just really valuing our time and our play and helping us get to that next level. So,
yeah. And if we were maybe to kind of let people sort of peek behind the curtain for a moment of what kind of the Players Network conversations are like, right? Can you give an idea to the audience of what are some of those things that you do look for in a really good situation in a club? Like, what are those kind of positive leaderships, green flags, maybe, so to speak?
Green flag is actually the perfect way to put it. And this is actually a really big thing of what we do at the Players Network. We're kind of trying to build a two-way street between, trying to give players more information on clubs that have really positive experiences, that have given players really positive experiences, but also given them not so positive experiences so that multiple players don't have to go through unprofessional environments, especially when they're up and moving from their home country to go play abroad and pursue their dreams. You don't want to go there and then be blindsided with a super unprofessional environment.
Yeah.
You don't want that anywhere, but especially in that situation where you're so at risk, so just outside of your comfort zone. Green flags are, being paid on time,
Mhm.
like helping you find housing or providing you with housing, having like some sort of like infrastructure just for like consistency of trainings and providing like the right resources for you in terms of like just success.
Yeah.
So those are a few, but there's a
Yeah.
long list.
No, yeah, and just in hearing you speak there, kind of what the thing I would probably add to it is like just clear and transparent communication. I think a big thing for me is like I know a lot of these things like clubs might not be able to provide a lot of resources, right? Like it may just be what the situation is, but I'd always rather you tell me up front like this is what the situation is. We can't get you housing, right? It's just not going to work. You're going to have to go find your own place to live. All right. Now I know that. Instead of yeah, we've got an apartment for you. We've got this, we've got that. Like we can help you with that. And then all of a sudden you get there and then you're just kind of left in the lurch for weeks on end, living in a hotel or something like that.
Right. Like, don't tell me that something is one way and then have it be completely the other once I've gotten on a flight, gone across the ocean, and like signed something to say that I'm going to be here for X amount of time. Like, be upfront.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so maybe we've already started to illustrate sort of what the red flags are, right? But is there any stories that really come to mind from you, whether from your own experience or from, having this dialogue with other players kind of in the Players Network chat, like that stick out to you of, oh yeah, that's a big red flag story.
oh, there's so many red flag stories of not being paid on time. This
Mm,
is huge, especially unfortunately in the women's game where not being paid on time or not being paid at all. Unfortunately, I can probably list off players that have experienced this, unfortunately. So that's like the biggest red flag for me because that's like baseline professionalism. And
yeah,
unfortunately, we're still working towards having that be consistent across the board in the women's game, but hopefully we're kind of trying to create some change from the inside and keep players going towards professional environments where that doesn't happen.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's the toughest thing. It's tough like about this business. Obviously, it is very performance and results driven. So you
Mm-hmm.
get the sense that like even when if for example you're losing games or are not playing well or whatever, like clubs are very reluctant to hand that check over, and it's almost like the kind of the image of you're both holding it and they don't really want to let it go and you're trying to pull it away. Like it's
But
tough.
win or lose, you did your job. Like you performed your service, so you should be
Exactly.
paid
Yeah,
or
exactly,
lose. Of
exactly.
course we win, but
Yeah, yeah. If we can set the scene kind of just for your career a little bit and maybe rewind here for a second. Um, Growing up in the Bronx was like how prevalent was the game in your life and how early did you maybe kind of actualize or realize a dream, like you're living out right now?
So football, soccer is like super prevalent in New York City, it being such an international city, especially the Bronx. So many people from so many different cultures come and live there. So I grew up on pickup in the park. That was like where the game was introduced to me,
Mhm.
and where I kind of developed my love for the game and also my love for the like worldliness of the game and the different cultures and ways of playing and ways of speaking and ways of interacting with people from different backgrounds. That really like shaped me as a young kid. I started playing when I was like 3 or 4, but like very quickly was like, this is it for me.
Yeah.
My parents tell a story of like just knowing like from the very beginning that like this was the thing. So yeah, I definitely think that, growing up in the Bronx it was very formative for me in terms of developing my love for the game and also the way that I view the world like through the lens of football.
Yeah. So how does a player like from the city from New York wind up going to the University of Virginia?
It wasn't easy. I started out playing locally,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, there at the time there were not a lot of girls clubs in general, but also high level clubs in New York City. That has changed now, thankfully. But there at the time really wasn't any high level options in New York City. So I was playing in New Jersey for a club called New Jersey Stallions Dynamite. Was started out as a little town team, but we ended up being quite good. I'm pretty sure like every player on the team ended up playing college soccer, and that
Wow.
like 95% of those were Division 1.
Wow.
Um, so that was a really cool environment to be around, just like super driven and dedicated players for a really formative like time of my life.
Hmm.
But I was actually the first person from my high school. I went to like a local public high school in the Bronx, and I was the first person from my high school to sign to play a Division 1 sport.
Wow.
And that has changed now, which is super incredible and exciting that like that has been able to continue after my leaving there. But it is something that I'm really proud of, and I'm really really proud of where I'm from, and it's really important for me to like continue to stay rooted there and continue to give back to my community and my people. So
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, and especially to put your community like kind of on the map in such a major way. Like, I mean, for those who aren't really familiar with the college soccer landscape, like Virginia is, it's one of the elites, right? It's kind of one of the household names. Like, what was that like to go to a storied kind of university like that and play at that level? And how do you look back at your time at Virginia?
playing at Virginia is like truly a dream. Like you say, it's like a pinnacle of college soccer. And to be able to play there was a jump for me in the beginning. Like I'll be honest, and I think that I'm not someone that shies away from those kinds of things. Like I love a challenge, and I'm very growth mindset oriented. So going into like this top level environment was really fun for me.
Mm.
But it was hard. It was really hard. And so I actually didn't get a lot of minutes at Virginia. I suffered a season-ending injury my freshman year, first year, if we're talking in Virginia terms. Um, and so I redshirted my first year, and then after that, I worked hard and I was surrounded by incredible players, but didn't get a ton of minutes. And I knew that I wanted to continue to play professionally afterwards.
Hmm.
Because I had a fifth year because of my red shirt, because of my injury. I actually ended up graduating in 3 years from Virginia and then going to Villanova for my master's and playing there, where I could have a bit more of a leadership role, get more minutes, and kind of prepare myself for that next level. But I dedicate a lot of the kind of player that I am right now and the work ethic that I have to having gotten to experience playing at such an elite level university like Virginia and getting to play with such incredible players, some of which are about to take on the NWSL championships this coming weekend and have played on national teams. And I learned so much from them, and I feel so grateful to have been able to like share the field with them and to be able to call them my friends. So
Yeah. First off, just a small note there. I mean, major props to, I don't know if people understand, like playing at a Division 1 school like that and graduating in 3 years, like that's small company that are able to kind of do that. But you may have just kind of answered that question, my next question for me. As you look back at like your time, I know like you said maybe the minutes weren't quite what you were hoping for when you went to Virginia, but is there really anything that you would have done differently as you reflect back on it, or did Virginia really set you up for what was next in your career?
No regrets, zero regrets. Virginia absolutely set me up in a way, even if it was just helping me grow physically on the field, mentally off the field, on the field as well. Like, and to be able to be in that professional environment, in that professional of an environment, is really something that I think has given me the framework to be able to think like, no, I can play in professional environments. Like,
Hmm.
how can I get there now? What can I do now more to get there?
Yeah. So if now playing for two major programs, like if we kind of like rewind a little bit to when you were leaving Villanova, would there be anything that you would say to incoming first year Sam when she's like coming onto campus? Any advice that you have kind of with the hindsight now of having played for the past 5 seasons?
Hmm. Patience, patience, patience. Um, I think as athletes in general, we are super prone to wanting like we work, result, work, result. And that is true, but sometimes it takes 5 years to see the results, or it takes 3 or 4 years to see those results. Or maybe like there are things that like I've been working on mentally on the mental side of my game since I was a first year at Virginia. And I am only now starting to really see the results of that work. And that was like I graduated, I was a freshman in 2016 and it's 2023 now. So I think being patient with yourself and be patient with the process of growing and allow yourself to grow. I think I was a little impatient with like wanting results right away.
Yeah.
And that makes sense, but it wasn't helpful at the time.
Yeah, yeah, I can completely resonate with that as well. I think so many players, they, like you said, they want the result. They feel like they're putting in the work and they want the result. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint when it comes to this, and that's really hard to understand. And it's also kind of being patient in like knowing that there are going to be setbacks to it too. You might feel like you've gotten the result, and then all of a sudden it gets kind of taken away from you, and that's the tough thing about college athletics is also, as we dive into now your pro career a little bit, I'm sure it wasn't always met with work and then positive result, right? Or maybe it was and then a setback. As we start to paint the picture of that professional career leaving Villanova, I've spoken to now a couple players who have gone to play in Kazakhstan, so I understand kind of how it has happened, but still I always have to ask, like, how do you wind up going and playing Kazakhstan?
That's so funny. There's like a shockingly large group of us that have played in Kazakhstan.
It
So,
is, yeah.
and it's all for the same team. It was just through an agent that I had at the time. I think they had connections there and multiple players that were being sent there, and having the kind of safety net of knowing that there were other Americans there that would help like ease that cultural like jump, because it was a big cultural jump, especially for a first contract. It was
Mhm.
like super different. But I was excited to go. Like it was my first professional contract, and I was going to get the chance to play in Champions League, which is a dream of mine.
Yeah.
And so it was. I mean, it was a super cool experience. Not one that I would ever change. It was very unique. Not a lot of people have that for their first contract. So
Yeah. Because at the time you were when you left, you were with the Gotham Reserves, right? Is that where you first went to Kazakhstan from?
yes. So I was playing for the Gotham Reserves. They're now called Dusk Women, but they are just the WPSL team that is based out of New York. And so I was having a really good like summer season with them. It's a summer league team, and I was getting the chance to be coached by some really incredible coaches that now actually were just nominated for Coach of the Year with Becky Tweed and Daniel Ball and Illyri Earnshaw, who are now all at Angel City. So really an incredible chance to grow under their coaching, but and their mentorship. But when you get an opportunity for a full pro contract to play in Champions League, you take it.
Yeah.
So
Did it seem like there was a path, like into, okay, if I play well here, maybe I can have an opportunity with the NWSL outfit, or was it just kind of like this might be where the ceiling is, at this club?
There's definitely a pathway that's being created to go from WPSL to NWSL. I think just for that moment in my career and just like knowing, the intricacies of where teams were at and things like that, it was just the better move for me to go and, start to develop my name and my career overseas. And I wanted to go overseas. I want
Yeah.
this adventure. So that's not to say that I don't want the NWSL as well, but
Yeah.
I wanted to play pro, and I was going to get that chance. So
Yeah. The interesting thing that I've as I've spoken to players who have played in Kazakhstan is that it's a very unique experience. One, from the cultural side, like you already kind of spoke about, like something just so different and unique to what you're used to, but also the ability to go and play Champions League and play against these top level opponents. But then that's such a stark contrast for what you're facing, day or week in and week out in your league. What was that process like for you, kind of going and playing against the giants of European football, but then also when you're in your league, it's no disrespect to Kazakh teams, but it just, the level isn't the same, right?
no, it's definitely not the same. I actually never even played in a Kazakh league game. We had
Oh
like
wow.
limitations on like the number of foreigners that could play, and I was there for such a short amount of time. Like I think it was like 4 or 5 months. And so I literally only played our Champions League games for Beek, the team that I was at in Kazakhstan. So I was watching the Kazakh League games, and the level was, I mean, we were blowing teams out like 14-0 or something like that, which is not great preparation to then go and play a Champions League match across the world. But we did some preparation against boys teams and just like a lot of internal work, which it's hard. That's hard, and that's something that obviously helps when you're playing in a really competitive local league.
Yeah.
It helps for preparation for that.
Yeah. Was the experience when you then go to Lithuania with is it Gintra? Is that how you say it?
Intra,
Okay.
yeah.
When is it the same kind of experience where you're only able to play Champions League, or is that now an experience where you get to play league and kind of be fully immersed in the team?
No, I was able to play like a full league season as well. So at Gintra, we played for the Lithuanian A Liga as well as the Baltic League. So the top teams from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania were competing in that, and then also played in Champions League. So I got a ton of games under my belt there. I was there for a much longer time too. I was there for 9 months. So much different experience. But it was somewhat similar. I would definitely say that the level in Lithuania was higher than it was in Kazakhstan,
Uh-huh.
um, but still not that was going to be really preparational for Champions League.
Yeah. How did that process come about of you making your way over to Lithuania? Like, how did the connection of, was it the same agent that brought you to Kazakhstan, brought you to Lithuania?
Well, it was actually funny because it was actually the same coach. So the coach from
Okay.
Kazakhstan was going to that new club in Gintra, in Lithuania, and he, enjoyed working with me and asked if I wanted to like come to that new club. And for me at the time, it was a good move simply because I only got 2 or 3 games under my belt with Beak, and I knew I needed another season and it was going to be another Champions League club as well. So
Yeah.
I was going to get more exposure in Champions League, a full season, a full professional season under my belt this time. And so, and it was also, helpful to know the coach, to be brought there by a coach that I knew, valued my play. And so it was that kind of move for me at the time. But yeah, that was how that worked.
Yeah. Because how do you kind of map out? and I know as much as we can kind of plan these things, sometimes it just won't go according to plan, right? But when you kind of first go over to Europe, like I know you mentioned still the NWSL might be a goal for one day, right? But when you're kind of figuring out your European adventure, so to speak, like is it with the idea of finding kind of Champions League clubs? Is it with the idea of how can I get towards, kind of quote unquote one of the big five, right? Germany, kind of England, the France, the some of the bigger countries, or what do you start to put down as your roadmap when you come over?
It really depends on the person, and it depends on your connections. But for me, my roadmap, like the way that I look at it is, I was trying to get my foot in the door with Champions League clubs and kind of make a name for myself in that way, and then try and make a jump to a big five country in Spain or France or Germany or Sweden or England, something like that.
Yeah.
And so following after my like second season professionally, when I finished with Gintra, I knew that I wanted to make that jump, and I knew that I felt ready and hungry to be playing at a much higher level, and a much more consistently high level. That was what was most important to me, to be
Mhm.
competing week in, week out, because I really wanted to grow as a player and continue to push my limits and see, what level can I get to? And so that's kind of how I ended up in France. It was not easy though, because I was actually without a team for about 6 months.
Mm.
So when my contract finished in Lithuania, there's a winter transfer window,
Yeah.
and I didn't get a team during that time. And so I spent about 5 months at home training on my own and working on my own. I coach and, working my own connections and trying to find a new agent and all these things, and also simultaneously building the players network.
Yeah.
And then I took myself on trial to France. I like found some trial opportunities, and then basically just took myself there and was like, bet on yourself, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And I ended up being with 3 different clubs in France, and one of them being the club that I ended up at now, RCSA. So that was a it now, like, hindsight is obviously 2020, and I'm like, I'm so happy that I had those 6 months off, because it led me to going on trial and ending up coming here, and I'm so happy here now. But at
Mhm.
the time, like, that was a hard mental battle, being
Yeah.
without a team. That was hard.
Yeah, it's like that idea we kind of spoke about before of how important the patience is, but sometimes the hardest thing when you're in the moment when you need patience is to actually recognize that you need patience, right? Like, uh,
And everyone's telling you need that patience, and I'm like, I know, but I simply don't have it right now.
I know, yeah, and I want to, if we can, just expand on this idea a little bit because and I was looking at some of the content that you were posting on the Players Network. Like, I really was fascinated when you spoke about this specific idea, and just kind of reading like the caption that you wrote about it. Like, as overseas players, it's a possibility for us that we don't really talk about. You hop from team to team, country to country, new dreams, new adventures. But when you're caught in that in between, like, what do you do, right? We don't have the support of players unions, established leagues. Like, we're working multiple jobs, staying on top of your training, sometimes on your own. Maybe you don't have a team to train with. It's a lonely place to be. And then, as you mentioned too, you start to see your friends, ex teammates, it's one by one. Now they're off to Sweden. Now they're off to here, and you're still at home. And it's like kind of a lonely place, and you feel stuck. Like that
Mhm.
I definitely felt that so much. It's like that feeling of you come home and you speak to people outside of the game, and they're like, "Oh, like what are you doing?" And it's such it's hard to answer because you're like, "Yeah, I'm talking, I'm trying to figure things out." At the same time, you're like, coaching here and there. Maybe you're like driving Uber, like you're just trying to do whatever you can to just put money in your pocket so you're ready. And it's such a weird space to be in, and I haven't quite figured out how to navigate it.
No, it is so hard. And I think, like, what I found honestly the most helpful was like leaning on other people, like leaning on people that understood the space. I think it's really easy to, almost isolate yourself, and it's like that makes sense. Like you're disappointed, you wish you had a contract, you wish you had a team, but you don't. And the people that are going to understand and also be able to really be there for you and also maybe like help you get through it are going to be people that are in that space too. And it might
Yeah.
be hard to like hear like about their successes and all that, but like at the end of the day, like their success is great and it has no effect on your success. It's only better if you're going to cheer them on, and also like maybe you can lean on them, and then at another time they can lean on you too.
Mm.
So I felt similarly to you, like what you were talking about, like people are asking like, oh, like what's going on? And like you try and explain, but like it is tiring explaining like something that feels like a failure in the moment to people
Yeah.
that don't totally understand the space that you're in. And that's not to say that they don't care. Like, of course they care. They're your friends and your family, but they might not totally understand. And that is draining, and you're already drained all like from the experience itself. So
Yeah.
I found leaning on people that were playing abroad, or were playing professionally was something that really helped get me through. And it takes a little bit of mental strength in the moment, but I think it was definitely worth it because it keeps you motivated and it keeps you like just hungry like for more, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because the reality is too, like when people ask us that question, I think sometimes we don't even really fully know, like
Yeah.
ourselves, what the situation is. So it's very hard for us to articulate it to somebody else because, like, we may say, "Oh, this is really what my goal is. I want to go play in this part of the world," but like at the same time we're still in a lot of ways open to whatever possibilities, and we're like working in all these different kind of avenues, talking to all these different people, so we don't know what's going to come up. And so it's such a hard question to answer, but I love like that the way that you say that. And it's one thing I imagine that you've kind of gained from the Players Network. I know I've gained from doing the show like this, is talking to so many other players and realizing that everyone has such a different story, but there's so
Mhm.
many common threads that we all have, and we all go through a lot of the same things. So it's like, all right, I'm not the only one that's dealt with this, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like maybe was that at all what led into the opportunity to go to France? Like, was there any kind of connection that helped you set those trials up, or was that really just all on your own, reaching out to clubs?
Well, it wasn't on my own. It was through, connections that we've created through the Players Network, which is really just like players helping players. And it comes from like, it sounds silly, but like simple things of like reaching out to someone that you saw played so at X club and saying, hey, like I'm without a team right now and like trying to figure this out all on my own. Like, do you have a contact for your coach or your manager, or your recruiting officer, or whatever it is, um, that I can send my film to? And sometimes you get answers, sometimes you don't. But all it takes is one yes.
Yeah.
And so, like, the amount, I don't even want to know, like, the amount of like random DMs I sent to people and like messages I sent to people and LinkedIn's and like all the things. And like, but all it took was one yes to get you there, you
Yeah.
know? So it really was like it was through me, but it was through like this network of players that we are building, of players playing abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a huge thing. It's like the moment you realize that, like, to just, even though in the beginning it might not feel the most comfortable thing to do, like to just send those messages out to whoever. And I know for me, like I can attest to this. Like anytime now a player reaches out to me, I'm definitely going to answer because I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be in that situation. Now I can't help, necessarily every player. I can't always give everyone a contact or whatever, but I know what it's like to be on the other end of that phone. So if I can help in any way, then I'm definitely going to try. You know what I mean?
Completely agree.
So going to France now, you mentioned that kind of betting on yourself
Mhm.
mentality, right? And that's a little bit what it is with a trial when it's not a guaranteed contract. Going into those 3 trials in France, is there anything that you can tell, any stories that you kind of recall from that time?
So many stories. It was like a month long experience. And basically my agent said, we're going to try and figure out more while you're there. So like I went there with only one trial booked, and at the end of the month I had done 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it really does help to like be in Europe, I will say. Just like the proximity of it all. But he said book the like cheapest, latest possible date for the end of the month, and like if we have to move it, we'll move it. And that's what we did. So you have to live like really by the seat of your pants, and you have to be super flexible in terms of like literally where you are physically, but also mentally. Like for me, like you spend a week at X club where you're dealing with a certain coaching style, a certain playing style, certain like uh personalities on the team, and then you get on a train and 2 hours later you're at a new club with a completely different culture, completely different coach, completely different style, and you have to see how that works and you have to flip it like that. And that can be hard. It's not, it is really hard. But it's also like a true like test to your adaptability, which I think is such a hugely important aspect of playing abroad. Like you gotta be able to adapt. And so like I thought that I was pretty good at adapting before I went on those trials, but like afterwards I was like, okay, I learned some things here.
Yeah. And as you're going through this, like you said, so many different changes, so much thrown at you all at once, which is always something that I'm impressed by, players that are able to do this, because I think a lot of people don't understand that it's not just, going and trialing and playing soccer. Like you have to fly there, you have to find somewhere to live, you have to feed yourself, you have to get around to all these places, introduce yourself, you don't speak the language, like there's 101 different things that were all kind of being thrown at you at once here. What is, as you're going into these trials too, like, and you've never played in France, so there's still probably a level of like trying to figure out, okay, what's the level like? What is the play style like in general? What's the sort of feedback that you're getting from clubs and coaches as you go through that trial process?
It really depends on the coach and what they're looking for, but really I do find that like they're looking at you not just as a player but as a person. Like how do you fit into their team personality? Are you getting along with the girls, and are you high-fiving people at the beginning of sessions or at the end of sessions, or are you thanking a coach at the end of the session? It's really small things like that that can go a long way. And I did find that like those small things mattered a lot to coaches. Especially when there's a language barrier, there are like things that you can do on the field that are like cultural, they're like soccer culture, football culture, that you can do like no matter if you speak the language or if you don't, to show the kind of teammate and person that you would be if they were to sign you. So I found that was like a common thread between just my different experiences on trial, like what the coaches were looking for.
And what the club that you've signed for now, I know you said you went on 3 trials, right? So what was that the third and final trial that wound up leading to the contract, or what stage was it in kind of the mix?
No, it actually was the second trial I went on. And so the way that it kind of works is, obviously also like teams have to sign you within transfer windows. So I went on trial in May, so you have to kind of wait and see. Like coaches can also always tell you one thing, and then you like in my experience, you don't believe anything until like you have it in writing. And so I think that that's a universal experience across many like jobs, but it's very true in soccer. And so you kind of like you go on trial and you have like a good conversation at the end with the coach where they say, we like you, like we think this really went well, like we're going to be in touch. And then you got to wait, and you have to go on trial to other places and then go home and then wait some more. And like that waiting was tough. But I ended up signing with them, around just in the middle of the transfer window or towards the beginning of the transfer window in the summer. And then I was in France again about a month later at the end of July.
Wow. And because did all three teams kind of have a similar conversation about contract, or was that the only one from those three kind of trials?
No, I had 2 offers,
Okay.
from the 3 trials that I went on, but positive feedback from all 3, which was and, all feedback is positive, of course, because, like, whenever you get some information about how you can grow, that's positive, but,
Yeah.
um, in terms of contracts, I had 2 offers, and I decided to go with the club I'm at now, so
Yeah. If I asked kind of the same similar question to when you were leaving college, right? And if you could say anything to kind of first year incoming Sam to Virginia, when you look at it from the same kind of lens here, with now being third year as a pro, anything that you would say that you feel like you've learned now that you would say to that player just coming out of Villanova and kind of bursting on the scene with wide eyes, trying to figure out how to do this?
That's such a good question. I would say it is honestly very similar to what I would say to my first year Virginia self, like the question that you asked earlier, but what you want isn't going to come right away. And you don't know completely how things are going to like end up rolling out and how something is going to positively affect the next thing. And like if you would have told me a year ago when I was leaving Lithuania, that I would have been home for 6 months and then came on trial and then ended up on a team in France, like that is so far from what I would have thought would have happened.
Yeah.
But it was such a transformational and positive experience for me, and I think has helped me grow not just like as a player but as a person so much that like I'm so grateful for like the way that this has all turned out. But in the moment, of course, like you're frustrated, like things are tough and you're like, come on, like I just want something right now. Like you don't want just something, like you want the right thing. And I
Yeah.
was lucky that, that time without a team led me to the right thing. Um and so I think that's like what I would tell them. What I would tell my like first year pro self is that like not everything is going to come right away, but trust it. Like it's going to come. The right thing is going to come.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I like what you said about the feedback piece, right? That all feedback kind of is positive feedback, and it's almost like we can apply that same sort of lens to, whatever stage of your career. It doesn't necessarily have to be looked at as a negative, even if you are coming off maybe an unsuccessful season, or in your eyes, like there's a lot that can still be gained from that if you change the perspective that you look at it with. So I definitely agree with that. Um, the last kind of the portion of the show that I like to ask this question kind of in a couple different parts here. I love the idea of the stories of players, right? The kind of ebbs and flows that they have, and they're all like so incredibly unique. So using that analogy of kind of story and your career as a book, right? Like what chapter do you feel like you are in right now in terms of the story?
Ooh, what chapter? Like the name of the chapter or like number or what?
It can be not necessarily number. It can just be whether you want to title it, or even just kind of what do you think the things are that are being written about in that chapter right now.
Hmm. I feel like I don't know if this is going to make total sense, but I feel like when you're like taking off on an airplane,
Okay.
like I still feel very much at the forefront of my career, and I feel
Yeah.
like I'm kind of like in the beginning I was like on the runway, like I was in Kazakhstan and Lithuania and I was like on the runway, and now like I feel like I'm like getting up into the air.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of football left to be played. And a lot
Yeah.
of things I don't know that are going to happen, but I'm excited to see what they are.
Yeah. And so that then the further part to that question then is now kind of, if you've taken off the runway, right, and now you're kind of up in the air, like where are the other chapters that you're looking to write? Is there anything that you can kind of foresee, or what are the sights that you're trying to see as you're up in that plane, kind of still keeping writing the story? And I know there's a lot of this that will we don't know. We don't know how to forecast it or how to write it. But is there anything that you look at, you're like, oh, I'd really like to write some chapters like that?
I would love to give you specifics, but I have learned that giving specifics does literally nothing. And
Yep.
like it ends up like just deterring you from going there. So honestly, like I just want to enjoy the journey,
Mm,
and I'm excited to, learn as much as I can along the way. And see as many possible places I can and play some really good football wherever that takes me.
yeah.
Um, I just want it to be in places that are going to challenge me and, help me grow as a player in person. And that's my criteria.
Yeah. It's definitely a good way to look at it, especially with a career like this that's so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And then the final piece of the question is, when the football career side, that book comes to a close, last chapter is written, somebody picks it up, they read it, what do you want them to say about it?
Hmm. Uh, I want them to say that she had perseverance,
Mm,
that she really persevered and she knew what she wanted and she went after it no matter what.
yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. You you have to have that if you want to have success in this game. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah. And I hope that like, if it's like a young little girl that like wants to play football herself, and is seeing that, and I hope that she then sees that like she can do that too, or they can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and just in speaking to you and some of the things that you have um kind of talked about in this episode, right? The focus on also giving back to your community and kind of giving something to the younger generation. If I know that you do much more beyond that, but just if at all, one, just giving an inspiration, right? Or giving a kind of story of someone who's done it, like that's pretty powerful for somebody to go and see that there is a route for me to go and do this, which I know for us at certain points there were, like, especially as Americans, like there were few and far between of us over in Europe playing. So it was kind of like you had to really search to find the ones that did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And seeing women who did it was even less. So I feel very grateful that, even some of the kids that I coach can see me and see that, this is possible. And
Yeah.
that's like, that's the most important thing to me, just that more, more girls continue to do this wherever they want, but in places that value them and, really help them just grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to share your story. I know it's busy when it comes to the season, and there's lots on your plate right now, so I can't thank you enough.
No, thank you, Brendan. This was super fun and so cool to talk with someone that like has a shared perspective, and you've
Yeah.
talked to so many other cool, impressive athletes. So thanks for having me on.
That is it for this week's episode. Thank you to Sam once again for stepping in the 11 for us this week. An amazing, amazing story, and looking forward to seeing what she does this year in France and, maybe beyond that, being a part of a promotion team, and perhaps next season, I don't want to jinx anything, knock on wood. I'm not even going to say it here, but it's looking very, but it's so cool to see her in the position that she's in now, especially given the story that led up to it, right? Being in places like Kazakhstan and Lithuania where things weren't always the easiest, and then having a 6-month spell where she was without a contract and, didn't quite know what was going to be next, if there was going to be another opportunity, to make an opportunity kind of for herself almost out of nothing, and now to be where she is. It's truly a remarkable story. So I'm looking forward to see what's next on the horizon for her. Thank you to all you out there who are listening and who are watching. I greatly appreciate it. You are the reason why, we keep doing this week in and week out. And like I said, I greatly appreciate it. The thing that I just ask you here on the way out, my one small token for all of these free episodes that we drop for you, is if you could leave a subscribe or a like on the YouTube video right here. If you're watching, if you are listening, make sure that you're subscribed and following along whatever podcast platform that you listen to. All right. Do me that favor, please, before you get out of here. And then I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.